Hello, everybody. This is Talkative Carl back again for another TV show review slash anime. I'm just gonna go with TV show review. You know what I'm talking about. And I am going over Yu-Gi-Oh! 5d's Season 1. I already cleared up the entire generation of the Dual Monsters, then GX. And this one I've been like, really, no pun intended, gearing up for. And this is where after I wrap up like Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, my uh, appeal of Zexal and Arc 5 we'll get to it, but it's like I don't necessarily, full disclosure, just I don't necessarily put Zexal and Arc 5 on a very high pedestal. I just leave it at that. But we'll get to it when we get to it. But 5Ds. Now we are, years in the future. Not too far. I mean, like, I think Zexo and Arc 5 are like, um, Arc 5 ish. But Zexo is probably even further into the future with this, like, super high tech stuff. No, I think, like, Vrain's probably got even further, but whatever. But we're in the future now. uh, it's fair to say maybe like heck, I don't know, maybe like 40 maybe not even 4 years. It's probably a good fair 100 years maybe in the future, given the fact that there's certain uh I won't say cameos, but it's like we'll eventually get into the Bonds Beyond Time movie, which shows that in 5Ds they know the history books of Yugi and Seto Kaiba and Maxima and Pegasus, but throughout the entire show they really don't reference them by name. But well, in the first season you get glimpses of certain characters. Sorry, you get glimpses of certain characters that make references to other supporting characters. There was one guy in like a crowd of like just duelists that looks like Joey Wheeler. He even talks like him to some aspect. Uh, and then there's this reporter who gets a little bit more screen time, who obviously looks like My Valentine. Don't you know? There's a fly in here. You don't even know which. I don't know. We don't even know if they're related by any chance, because like it's pretty dang obvious that Joey and My Valentine might have hooked up, because the obvious feelings they have for each other. So it's fair to say they might have hooked up, and then they had descendants, and these two might be related or distant, or at least cousins by lineage or something. If Joey and Ma had any kids and they had kids, and it went on so on. But anywho, in this future, because Domino City had this, at least 20 years before the main story begins, there was this cataclysmic accident, or no, not even accident. We initially think it's an accident, but you'll later find out it was like a purposeful thing for a larger plan. But this reactor called Inner D was supposed to harness dual energy to be like a perpetual energy to run the city, kind of like free energy kind of thing. It's kind of like, if you remember from the first Iron Man movie, the in the beginning, after Tony come back from being captured by terrorists, he decided to use like the that giant arc ring thing as like uh, as a source of an inspiration to make his mini arc reactor for his suits. Uh, is kind of sort of like in that, supposed to be in that function, but there was a how to put it, like it became too much, or it uh well, at least they thought it was too much, or like the reverse polarity or something like that. It was going in reverse or something like that. But the containment unit couldn't contain it, and it caused an explosion, which caused like a separation, like split Domino City in two, and a portion of it, uh, separated and like became like satellite. It's kind of like this really speaks to like high class and low class themes here, which I really like because the portion of the city that was not, you know, heavily damaged still eh, became like the higher class socially people lived and continue on, while satellite became where the lower class lived and people who can barely rub two pennies together kind of thing. Well, as far as like their works condition is was what was explained is that they pretty much like New Domino City sent all their junk and whatnot down to the satellite where it's recycled, and because the satellite work pretty much in factories, and send like the recycled stuff back to New Domino for them to like reuse in like in some fashion. But life in the satellite was like awful, and man, talk about prejudice. It was like this, you get like a Yu-Gi-Oh show that handles prejudices and social status issues. And like when you see, like, pay attention, because when you see like how, like, because they are, satellite is overly policed, and like you can, it really hits home, especially in recent years since 2020, how like like the world became more aware about like the over policing, and how like it's they're not, because you got like dueling cops essentially, who, oh, which is another thing really quick, dueling has evolved to the point where now like you got like racing, you got like people, maybe not in cars, but like motorcycles in some fashion, where people duel on. It's like a new form of dueling, because everything is fast paced in this future, and you even got like dueling stadiums now that's like a NASCAR race kind of situation, and you got this duel mode called turbo dueling. That's what it's called, turbo dueling, and it's technically a field spell when you on a motorcycle, and the car goes in like autopilot, which in the second season moving forward, they kind of took that away to make it more exciting, and really put your mental fortitude to the test, where you gotta split your mind between actually driving and then dueling. But in the first season, it's all autopilot, so you can focus on the duel. And you got speed spells now. Instead of normal spells, you got speed spells to in a way to like catch up in the high paced dueling. You can't use normal spells in turbo dueling. If you do, you suffer life point damage. Uh, so turbo duelists, by and large, don't use normal spells. They have to use speed spells. Uh, I wish they kind of have that in real life in some aspects, because like there's like a spell card. One of my favorite speed spell cards is called Angel Baton, where if you got uh, two or more speed counters, you got 12 speed counters that go up one notch each turn, up to the maximum of 12. And depending on the number of speed counters, it lets you know how many speed spells, what kind of speed spells you can use. Ace Baton, for example, requires just two or more speed spells to use to draw two cards, but you got to discard one. And now you got a new form of summoning called synchro summoning, which, synchro monsters are all in white. And you got tuner monsters. A different kind of effect monster where the way it works is like if a tuner monster, let's just say like this monster called, Dark Resonator, that has 3 levels on it. And if you want to summon, let's say, Red Dragon Archfiend, which is like a 8-level synchro monster, you need a 5-star monster on the field with your level 3 Dark Resonator to synchro summon the level 8 Red Dragon Archfiend synchro monster. So, that's the new form of summoning, which it took me a hot minute to understand when this show started, but it's probably like my favorite form of summoning, because I don't know, especially when I'm using Blackwing deck on my Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. That's my main kind of deck, which I do have to like purchase some new cards and like really kind of like tweak it a bit, because it's not as full, because it's pretty good so far, but it could be better. There's a few things I'm missing from the deck. We get to a character that using a Blackwing deck that gave me the inspiration, because I freaking love Blackwing, and it's like my number one, competitive kind of deck that I really want to always use, because it really, helps me get more monsters on the field and apply more resources. But it is heavily, I don't want to say heavily reliant, but it's useful when paired with trap cards, because it's a heavy kind of trap card archetype with at least 10 to 12 spell cards involved. So like trap cards really back you up. Anyway, like I was mentioning, the satellite people being overly policed, where it's like they treat it like low class citizens. So instead of police doing their job by helping, like serving and protecting and helping all of New Domino, they are just like, well, we in real world we already know like how like policing like became a thing. They need policing to police lower class, or just anybody who's not rich and white. They are just like police are just used to like keep anybody who's not rich and white in check, essentially. And like it just grew over time, where it's just like where they just police the lower class areas, or at least what they envision lower class areas. So when you got like this other supporting character called Officer Trudge, who you see antagonize the main character, Yusei Fudo, who's like the main character who has the Stardust Dragon, one of my favorite synchro monsters. And it's real. And when you see him like really, at the, first half of the first season, you see him like really just talk to this guy, talk to his kids like in a very like belittling tone. He doesn't even view him as a person. He calling him like satellite scum, and that, most New Domino citizens not all, but like quite some, talk with people who, when they find out like from the satellite, talks to them like like just garbage, like they're garbage. They're not even people, which is sad. It's effed up. And there's this prison called the facility where people get arrested and sent to, and they get marked with like a particular like look like a face tattoo, but with different lines or geometric shapes, to not only, if they police need to, they can always track you in case if you pop up on their radar, they can easily find you, or at least have your information in the database. It's kind of like fingerprinting, signatures, or like wanted poster kind of situation. They can always pull you up. Uh, uh, there's other like character named Jack Atlas, who's pretty much like the Seto Kaiba of the future. Except like he didn't start off rich. He was from the satellite. Him, Jack, and quite a few others come from the satellite, but he aspired, for bigger, things. So he ended up betraying his friends, stealing Yusei's dual runner and Stardust Dragon, and moseyed off to the New Domino City because let's call him like the mayor. I'm pretty sure they refer to him as the mayor of New Domino City, Rex Goodwin, who have ulterior motives, decided to use Jack Atlas to become like New Domino City's champion, dueling champion. So he's kind of like the celebrity there, which makes him like the Seto Kaiba in a way, minus the little brother. So yeah, I mean, you can get a picture of like what's like life is like for some people and others. And side note, you look at Officer Trudge. If you ever read like or watched season 0 of Yu-Gi-Oh, one of the bullies there, Officer Trudge looks exactly like, which stands to reason at some point that bully had descendants, which turned into Officer Trudge eventually down the bloodline, which stands to reason maybe that's where he gets like, I'm not saying like just because one of your ancestors might turn out to be a complete asshole doesn't mean that his descendants at some point will all gonna end up like that. But you can see there's like a twinge of it, because like I said, the first half of this season he's just like a complete dick. But then again, you can attribute that to like the way he was probably raised and grew up on, believing like anybody from the satellite are just like scum, and they don't have like rights, or you say rights, but they don't treat it like they got rights at all. Anyway, you say, and like he got like these group of friends. The thing is, I like a lot of these characters in 5d's, and I think like Yu-Gi-Oh! GX and 5d's probably got like the most supporting characters. Well, I think like if I was about to say like I think they got the most supporting characters, but I'm recalling Zexo and Arc 5, and like definitely Arc 5 got like a hell of a lot of like supporting characters that you barely can even keep up with, or at least don't have like enough. Some of them fall by the wayside because there's just too many, and I think like GX and Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters GX and 5d's found their sweet spot of supporting characters, or at least those who they choose to focus on, because unfortunately, as much as because the voice actor Tristan Taylor also is the voice of Yu-Gi-Oh! Yusei Fudo in 5d's, but he didn't have Tristan didn't have like an arc or of his own or well, except for maybe like his duel against Nesbit with Serenity and Duke Devlin, and another duel he was partially involved in was when he gave Joey a red battle guard in Duelist Kingdom. But you know, aside from those two, he didn't really have like a major like. I mean, he's just supporting friend, like a pretty much a cheerleader. He knew how to duel, but he wasn't as good as obviously as Yugi or Mai. Probably on equal ground with Taya, but you know, he definitely could have beat like Joey before the story Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters story started. But Joey over time got better and got better cards, so obviously he wouldn't be able to take on Joey, that much anymore. But yeah, like they kind of increasing, after this point, they really increasing like the number of supporting characters, and it's like it's too many characters. And I'm pretty sure I might bring it up in Zexo and Arc 5, and maybe Vrains. I still haven't watched Vrains. I'm saving that as like a just fresh, so I'm avoiding that for now. But I think after this point, all right, you got too many people to focus on. Anyway, speaking of friends, you got these. Well, you would think these characters you see in like the first episode, while Yusei is making a brand new duel runner since Jack stole his first one and using it in his turbo dueling in New Domino. You get this, I remember Riley because in the dub he's treated like a boy, but in the sub she is obviously a girl, and that is speaking highly of it because like the way the voice actor of the dub comes across like a girl, even though it sounds raspy, but you can tell it's like a female, and it's like I'm not sure why that the English dubbing director decides to retroactively not make Riley a girl. I mean, it's like I don't understand what's the harm in that. Maybe it's because just a theory here. There was an episode after Yusei lost a duel against like an former friend, which we'll get to eventually, but his duel runner was left behind, and these crew, because like I can't remember, like there's like a fat guy, a guy with glasses and locks, and some other dude, skinny dude, who's kind of like a like a party pooper kind of thing, and Riley, and they were trying to get Yusei's duel runner out of this like rough area because it will get snatched and dismantled and try to be sold, and they had go through these like rough areas where like because life in the cellar is so rough, you got dilapidated buildings for the most part, and people like living in squalor, and they you got like rough like just thugs trying to like, hey, you got to pay the toll kind of thing. So they dish their cards, just to people like scrambling to, get these cards. And then a few miles later, they come across another group of people and they dish their clothes. And in that moment, you can see where like they're obviously cutting certain shots where like Riley is clearly a girl, but you see certain shots where Riley's like arms crossed or something's covering her chest, and it's like clearly the dub is kind of like I mean, I'm clearly, Riley would have been wearing a bra at the very least. But I guess he can't, like, even, the kids WB, I guess, did not want, uh, half naked female, because that's what they do with the over at the West when it comes to the cards. Because if you look at the Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh cards, it's like Harpy Lady or the Amazoness cards. Most of them, have like cleavage showing, and like, some of the skirts were a little high. But like over in the West, they lengthen it, they cut out the cleavage, that kind of thing. They, because kids we don't want to show kids boobs, whatever. But it's ironic because so far, I think this is the first time where you get like sector security, that's what the police force is called, actually seen with guns. It's laser guns, but still guns nonetheless. They didn't cut it out because, like in Duel Monsters, Pegasus security, you see them like pointing their fingers, like, "Hey, stop that right there." But you watch like the sub, they clearly are wielding guns. So this is the first time they actually at least seen like producing, like, because you got security, they gotta have weapons on them. But it's laser guns, but nonetheless. But anyway, these friends, they pop up here and there, but you would think they will become like part of like the main story, but no. You get other supporting characters, which is funny because I don't recall Yu-Gi-Oh ever doing this. At least not before. Is that other group of supporting characters come into the mix that's part of the main story that become like the main focus, pushing out who you would think become like the main, part of it because they're friends with the main character. They kind of get pushed to the side, which is like really effed up if you think about it. But in the end, you probably don't necessarily care because they are not that distinct to warrant any kind of care in the world, which is rough, but it is what it is. So, their plan is to get Yusei. They come with this kind of like Ocean's 11 kind of plan, where Yusei, has to drive to this, through this, garbage tunnel thing. Because at one point, I don't know why nobody else came up with this kind of idea, but maybe because, which is another thing, having like a deck is, forbidden satellite in the facility, and dual runners are illegal too. So you see like arbitrary kind of laws that clearly is like, you can't, they essentially are nixing fun for anybody in the satellite. They purposely are making sure like they're making life harder for these people, which is really effed up. But their plan is at a certain time these tunnels open up has like a doorway at the end of the tube where they're about to like dump where like the New Domino City's garbage gets dumped. But there's a small window of time before that garbage starts, come tumbling out in like a sea of garbage, which you'll see. So Yusei has to hit a certain time at a certain speed, like really crank it, in order to make that timing before this garbage come tumbling out. Which of course he does, because he was trying to make it to the New Domino in order to challenge Jack in a race to, and a duel in order to get his Stardust Dragon back. So he eventually does. And side note, which I can highly relate to Yusei, he's afraid of bugs. And, like the second duel in this season, Yusei duels against these thugs, these nobodies. You never see them again. One of which is completely amateur, using this insect deck. And one of his friends mentions about how, like, he grew, you say grew a fear of bugs because some because it's so rough here. I guess like a bug nearly crawled in his ear while he was sleeping. So ever since he grew like a fear of bugs, and one of his main like enemies using like a insect deck, more particularly a spider deck, which is like kind of like I do not like. I could not deal with that. Uh, so you can see, like, you say skill. He's a very very good duelist. I think I think him, Jack, and Crow, because I remember watching this YouTuber called TGS Anime. Great guy, and like he does a lot of videos for Yu-Gi-Oh, and like character profiles and so forth, and giving you stories of different like archetypes of cards, like the Cosmo deck and Six Samurai, and he goes over about the Earthbound Immortals and uh, you know legendary beasts, all that kind of stuff. And he uh where I was going with this. What's going on, like bugs he was going over the like the ranking, like all like the best main protagonist duelists, and like all the villains, and in a separate video, and another separate video, all the rivals, and if you look at it, like I think like Jaden Yugi is probably like the best main character out of all the main characters. Is like I got the most wins and very few losses out of the entire series. He's that Jaden is like that freaking good. I think like Yusei is like right below him, just by like maybe like a few to maybe 10 points or so below him. Yusei is that good because he's rarely got losses. He got like a few, maybe like somewhere between 3 to 5 losses in the entire 5D series. Uh, uh, so fairly close to Jaden, and like Jack Atlas probably number one out of the rivals, and Crow Hogan out of the best friends. It's like I'm pretty sure he's number one. I'm pretty sure. So you can tell, like, the 5D's characters are no freaking joke, because like I think like somewhere around like GX, well, they been hit their stride after the Duelist Kingdom arc. When they enter Battle City, that's when they was like starting to like get their real footing. But like things really like show like, okay, this is how we doing things, like somewhere around GX, and they kind of up the game with 5Ds. And I like in each generation they try to, like, whenever they come up with like a new form of summoning, you gotta do a new gimmick in order to like make that happen. Like Vrain's got like a thing. I don't recall what it is specifically that's association with Link monsters, but I mean, I like the fact that they come up with something new, and like dual tainting with like in Arc 5, when you gotta get these action cards is it has nothing to do with like the summoning, but it gives you like a new gimmick on how to like make the game fun. Again, these different action cards that do certain things that in the main game wouldn't be allowed, like allowing like a to negate an attack, which is like having a picture of like a dodge motion that is essentially negate attack. But anywho, uh, once Yusei makes it to New Domino, uh, he challenges Jack and nearly was about to win until like Sector Security showed up because Rex Goodwin, Mino, Jack's handler, and this Pennywise looking motherfucker, this short dude named Lazar, was monitoring the situation. But they chose not to call security right away. They wanted Rex has like a goal in mind. He has a mission, and he wants to find the 5 signers, people who are born with marks, with different pieces of the Crimson Dragon, and he wants the Crimson Dragon to be summoned to fight off this impending threat of the Dark Signers. And Yusei and Jack definitely got pieces. You know, Jack got like the wings of the Crimson Dragon. Yusei got the tail. You later find out that Rex, because he has like a prosthetic arm, from like, because he was there at the Inner D explosion, along with Yusei's father and as well as his brother Rex Goodwin. Roman Goodwin, who is the leader of the Dark Signers, turns out, and we'll get to that soon. But they were like, well, at least Roman was the cause of the Inner D explosion. So he, Rex just needed to find the other 4, and Yusei gets arrested before like the duel was completely done and put away. But Rex needs, because it was hinted, because you see like the, Jack and Yusei's arm was glowing, which it was like a burning kind of pain, where like the signs, come up as like tattoos on their arms. So Rex wants to confirm what he saw on the security cam. So, because there was like a big red dragon that sprung up above the stadium for a brief moment when the duel was really getting hot. So you want to push Yusei to his dueling limit by putting him through his paces, through like the facility, and and bringing him out of the facility eventually. But you see like how it is for like people who gets arrested in this new age, where you get this fat motherfucker warden running things, and essentially like he's running like a chain gang kind of situation, where he actually got like an dueling like a archetype deck basically centered around like chains and bindings, and he's a complete cheater. But Yusei has this like knack with like making friends and showing people that because he couldn't have his own deck, but he ran into like this guy who's pretty much running the like a prison that was running the place, is always one of those, named Tanner, and he met up with this old kook who I don't really care for like that. I'm glad he was kind of like downplayed a little moving forward, named Izanagi, who had this kind of like he snuck in his own deck, which is pretty much like a artifact kind of deck. Not the artifact deck, but it's kind of like based off like Inca and Mayan type of images. And Yusei earned the respect of Tanner, and because like this warden was such a asshole, the other inmates, who snuck in like certain of their favorite cards in with them, all gave it to Yusei to build his own deck, because after Tanner Izanagi like was used as like pawns to make Yusei conform to the warden's sick needs, because you can tell this guy could be, he's definitely sadistic, but I think it's probably worse in the sub, because when you first talks with Yusei, he gets weirdly perverted, like like subtle, things he says, like weirdly perverted, uh and so the other inmates, don't care for that because they respect Tanner. So they help Yusei, and Yusei managed to win despite like this mismatch of cards. But like Rex was watching this whole time and like you know fired this warden off the bat. But like you knew who he was when you hired him. You didn't seem to mind. There's a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to Rex, when like certain decisions, and like you could have just done this without having to resort to this. You kind of like just fooling around, like there's no reason. But anyway, uh, uh, since Yusei won the duel, which was like the deal, he gets to be released. So, and Izanagi and Tanner was eventually released because it was about to be cut loose soon anyway. But Rex had Yusei released, and one of the inmates who was planning like a breakout but didn't, because he wanted to back up Yusei and put an end to the warden's cheating, because he was using the security cameras to spy on Yusei's hand. He told Yusei about this buddy of his, which Yusei later meet up, named Blister, who had his own personal issues. So everybody always have one in these kind of shows. Everybody seems to have like their own little issues that the main character gets them to not get over, but make peace with, kind of situation. Because that's the whole point of the creators idea with Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like building friendships through card games or just games. And Blister had been hung up over his past, where him and his friend was part of like the turbo dueling circuit, and there was on the rise, but it's kind of like in sync. Blister was looked at like the Justin Timberlake out of the two, but he wanted to go bigger, but like his friend thought like they was fine, the way they are, because they didn't think his partner was like as skilled as Blister. But which caused the rift, and right at the finals, they got into like an accident. I'm not sure, because like there's clearly death. There's obvious death in 5d's. There's always obvious death in the series in general, but obviously WB cut out certain spots to make it seem like, they were missing or they moved away, but clearly they probably just died, because like his partner left him a card. They said like he sent them this, but he's probably left it them as like a part of his last will or something like that, because the guy never showed up, so you don't know. But he left him this card, and it was kind of singed from the accident, but he thinks he left him that to remind him of breaking their friendship. But you say remind him, no, it was like a symbol of their friendship. He wasn't taunting Blister with that. Blister, thanks to Yusei, got out of that rut and helped him get his bike back, which, once again, I don't know why that Rex did not make sure he facilitated the release of Yusei's motorcycle after he was released. But Trudge look like a sting operation almost. Trudge busted Yusei trying to break out his motorcycle, which once again, to understand, if you want this guy to prove that he's a silent, he needs a motorcycle to participate in these turbo duels. So it's kind of like, why don't you just make sure you get the access without getting into it with like Officer Trudge and the other police? But you see another like major duel with Trudge, which Yusei once again like beat thanks to the assistance of Blister, keep preventing Trudge from trying to like cheat and cause a crash. But once Yusei won and then escaped, he ended up in sort of an accident which resulted in him like temporarily losing his memory. He was found by these two twins. Like I really don't care for, but Leo and Luna. Luna being another signer who has like the one of the claws of the Crimson Dragon, and they help Yusei regain his memory. And they're part of like I guess like our affluent family. You never see their parents, but because given like the way they're living, I'm pretty sure they are like of high regard in society. Leo's more of the duels between the two, but he's still like an amateur. I mean, hell, I think like even Joey can like really stump this kid, but not that because he got like a Morphtronic deck, which is kind of a cool thing, and his deck is kind of cool, even though it's in the hands of like a complete, like I won't say complete amateur, but it's like, man, this kid like, because he's cocky and like I won't say it's annoying, but it's just like he's a kid. He doesn't know any better, but it's like it's hard for me to give like a total pass sometimes, because like there's certain things that's just common sense, but you say that until like you're on the other end of the spectrum of people saying like it's just common sense, and it gets kind of irritating when you hear that from people. But you can tell he knows certain things as you hear him get off his chest to his sister later on in the season, saying that he kind of resented his sister because when she was young, she got sick, and he had to be usually the main one taking care of her, which resulted in him having less time to practice dueling so he can be a little bit better by this point. But he doesn't, he doesn't hate her for it, but he just wish he had that time. This is why he's not up to snuff as he thought he would be. But he got this Morphtronic deck where it's like a machine deck, but it's like certain gadgets that kind of like Transformers. It's like you got a cell phone, which is like a cell phone that it's like like GoBot and Transformers kind of situation. And you got like a boomboxing, which is like a boombox. It's like a 80s thing, like I see it in history books. I was born in '88, so I wasn't around during the boombox era, but I know of the boombox from movies. And like even like a stapler, even like a stapler kind of a transforming thing, but the way it transforms in the show is depending on the position where you put it. Like attack mode, it transforms in this robotic form. Defense mode, it goes into its like standard what it's supposed to be, like a like a cell phone. It'll look like a cell phone when it's in defense mode kind of situation. And he has like each one has an effect. Like cell phones probably like ironically has my favorite effect, where it's like you roll a die, a 6-sided die, because it got like 6 digits on the cell phone, and depending on the number of die, you get to draw that many cards, and whatever Morphtronic cards you draw, you get to summon. So even though it's kind of weak, but it has like a cool ability. And Luna, I hate her deck. I like it slightly more than anything I see from Taya, but I really do not like her deck but she's not the duelist, so it stands to reason. But it's like, uh, she's it's like just because she's a little girl doesn't mean you have to make her shit so fucking girly. Cause she got like a, like a unicorn card. Uh, there's like a lion card that has like a unicorn's horn on it, and she has each of the five senators has like a particular dragon. You see, it has Stardust Dragon, uh, 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 Jack has Red Dragon Archfiend. Luna has Ancient Fairy Dragon, but it's sealed away and was taken by one of the Dark Santas who's has like a beast deck, but more particular and monkey kind of deck. And he's kind of like because Luna each Santa has like a particular. Well, at least in this future, it's established there's psychics out there. It's kind of like mutants from the Marvel universe. But they're ostracized, but they're organized. We'll get to that part in a moment, because one of their head psychics is a signer as well, Akiza, aka the Black Rose. She has a definitely interesting arc, but Luna can travel between. That's why she was like sick when she was younger. She was like manifesting her ability, her signer ability to transport herself between the real world to the spirit world, where all these like doom monsters are from. And Ancient Fairy Dragon is sealed away because of this Dark Santa, and her mission is try to release her so she can help save the world and the spirit world. Like I said, like typically I skip over a lot of the Leo and Luna center kind of episodes, because not that they're bad, but it's just like they're like one of my least favorite characters. And it's like I mentioned in my review of all the seasons of Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, which you can check out my past reviews of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Seasons, and link in the description, Yu-Gi-Oh.com, like youtube.com/talkativecarl. And as I went over with GX, I think they have like GX probably had like the best supporting cast I've seen in the entire series so far. And like, even those some are better than or at least I won't say better, but like slightly more important than the others, I still don't hate the others. It's like each one was like even Cyrus, like like you would think Cyrus is probably like the lamest character, but even he has like an impressive arc. It is more than just like a whiny kid, but he had more growth than probably most other of the characters. Bastion, he pops in and out. I still like Bastion in some ways because he had technically an arc too. It's just what I'm saying, like each one had their moment, and despite how short, it was still an arc where you can like get something from. Like, yes, Leo and Luna has technically an arc, but it's just not an appealing arc. It didn't resonate with me like that. Izanagi is a know-nothing kind of. He pops in to give insight about like the Crimson Dragon, because he's into like historical artifacts. It's kind of like Alan Grant from Jurassic Park, because he's like kind of like an archaeologist or dueling archaeologist. He's there to meet Yusei at the facility, and I offer some insight and pal around with him in the later episodes and seasons. Tanner is interesting, but he's kind of like just like feel like Yusei is like like somebody like to like listen to. I won't say listen to Yusei's problem, but he's just there sometimes, and like just like a backup, or like he needs somebody to watch Leo and Luna. Him and Izanagi is right there because they don't really need to be part of the main story because they're not like signers or anything like that. But and like Yusei's initial friends you saw at the pilot, like you barely see. Every once in a while you see them, hanging around at the orphanage that you later, see in the season that Yusei, Jack, and Crow come from. But it's like, man, it's like They're know nothing kind of characters. Uh, um, so Rex is making another massive tournament where everybody can participate, even though they might be from the satellite. If they got the dueling skills and they, get like the invitation, they can participate. And when you see like Yusei come up, as each of the duelists of the tournament gets introduced, you hear like the roar of the crowds just screaming like, "Get that satellite out of here! You ain't no duelist!" And it's like, just the crowd is just like relentless until like this other duelist named Greiger. He has an interesting arc. He steps up to like get give Yusei because Yusei is ignoring this. He doesn't really care. It's like I wish I had that kind of mentality, because like by and large I can ignore certain things, but maybe it's just a little bit more sensitive, so things get under my skin a little bit easier than it's just depending on what you say. But it's like I can't just remain that stoic. And Yusei is probably like the most stoic among him and maybe like the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains guy. It's probably like the most stoic main characters out of all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Main characters from the entire franchise. Because, they can be in funny moments, but it's kind of like they're the straight man among the other goofy people kind of situation. Which kind of makes the funny moments even more funny. They eventually come across Akiza, who's pretty much like who's has this persona called the Black Rose. She's a signer, but she has another claw on her arm, just like Luna. She has a dragon called the Black Rose Dragon, and like Akiza, and like I said many times before in my other reviews, Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise has like a bad habit of treating their female leads, because they start off cool as hell, but by the end of the season or get into the next season, they are just like, they're, because they're supposed to be like great duos, like My Valentine, Alexis Rose, Akiza, as like the three primary examples of like start out as like badass duelists or duelist, and like got like initial wins, so many wins in the beginning before the story even starts, and like you don't see that play out often when the story gets going. I think Akiza has more wins than Alexis and My Valentine, but it's just like all the other female leads. Their skills gets diminished for some reason, for plot convenience, and it's just sad. And like Black, and because of Akiza, really makes because like the plant type cards were so low on the totem pole of type of cards that people use, that she was the one that kind of really elevated plant type decks. Over time, since in recent years, the card game produced more, not only supporting cards for like the Black Rose kind of thing, but just plant types in general, which I thought was cool. But man, they really kind of like nerfed her later in the seasons. But she's a psychic duelist, and while she's dueling, because she couldn't control it when she was younger, everybody is just like mutants I'm about to say MCU, but Marvel, where it's like instead of like each one, it's like she's like Jean Grey. Put it that way. She's like the Jean Grey here, and she couldn't. It's like Jean Grey without the help of Professor Xavier really like teaching her how to control her powers that doesn't hurt people. Unfortunately, she has this guy named Sarah, who's a leader of the Arcadia movement, who's like an evil Professor Xavier, who's gathering all these psychics uh, to eventually kind of like kind of take over, and especially like you know feeding off the despair of these people who were probably ostracized and hated, uh, and so it's like, okay, like people hate me and they hurt me, and people love I love because they even knew me, so I'm just gonna hurt them back kind of situation. So like I'm gonna be part of this group. Unfortunately, you gotta be a certain level of skill because Sarah is trying to breed psychic warriors, and they gotta be top notch, at least close to her and Sarah and Akiza level of power. But Sarah is sadistic as hell. And the sub even more so, obviously, because Akiza has a dark signer, because either the dark signers have like a grudge against like the normal signers in some capacity. Uh, Akiza has dark signer named Misty, who once again it's like Misty is using like a reptile kind of deck, and reptiles by and large, in the real world, doesn't get much love. But I think like in the past few years, there's been a lot more support for reptile. If people like reptile monsters, I think like it started with like Viper and Yu-Gi-Oh GX, but over time, like they've really been hitting like uh, more reptiles for people. And Misty had a little brother named I forgot his name, who had shown psychic abilities, and he was like a huge fan of Akiza's skills. So and as soon as he got in the door of the Arcadia movement, he, which is kind of like a twisted version of Duel Academy, but for psychics. And Akiza was obviously she just grew hard because everybody hated her because her powers was going wild and nobody really taught her how to control any of that. And Sarah just manipulating her, obviously, but so she grew cold towards this little kid who was just looking up to her. It's kind of like don't meet your heroes kind of situation, because sometimes we don't know, like in real world when people meet their favorite celebrity, like when they're just out on the street, and they might come across you might come across rude, which like I imagine not all be like that, but on rare occasions when you come across that, you don't know, they might be having like a bad day and they probably don't mean to, whatever. Or sometimes the fan might be a little bit too aggressive or not adhering to the celebrities request, like, hey, can you like, I don't feel like taking a picture right now, I'm sorry, or like I'm in a rush kind of thing. And like it's disappointing, but you should be a little bit more understanding. But it's not in this case. Clearly Akiza was like obviously going through something, but just hasn't resolved that inner trauma. So she grew cold to the kid who's supposed to been, who she could have got brought under her wing and like befriended him, but she wasn't in that place yet. And not until when Yusei showed her the way. But Sayer wants to try to see like how powerful this kid can be, put him through all this like electroshock kind of therapy or whatever, like just basically it's kind of torture, just to try to see like really push his like psychic abilities and see how far it can go, which in the sub ended in his death. In the dub, he was sent away, and according to Sarah, it's like certain hideouts of theirs always changed to the point where even eventually he wouldn't know. but Misty became a Dark Santa, and Dark Santas are usually not usually they all are people who embrace the darkness after dying in order to seek revenge against those who they feel like wronged them. Like they like holding grudges so deep that they, embrace the darkness in order to like become the avatars of these earthbound immortals who are basically based off the Nazca lines in Peru, because you got like the spider, monkey, the condor, and the reptile or a lizard, and and Misty just like blames Akiza because for her son's her brother's death or disappearance. Well, I don't know why I put death in quotations, but basically death. So in the sub, she kind of like almost kind of like Doctor Strange, where she just driving out like really focusing on the road. But unlike Doctor Strange, he wasn't trying to kill himself. Misty just like was so distraught because it was just her and her little brother, and Misty was like his famous model and everything like that. She ends up driving her car off the cliff, but embraced the darkness in order to seek revenge against those Akiza for who she think caused the death of her brother. But anyway, Akiza, they see Akiza in the square showing off her power, trying to duel and show off her power, which caused realistic damage thanks to her psychic abilities. Not all of it is like Shadow Realm kind of stuff, which Dark Science kind of, in a way, produce similar effects to Shadow Realm sometimes, because they can make damage real too. But anyway, the you get the Black Rose kind of thing. She seems like a like serious threat, but ironically, a threat that is a part of the center team that is usually trying to like bring over to their side because they need her assistance. They need her, but when like the tournament begins, this is where I don't like Leo, because he's trying like, I want to help Yusei, so I'm going to take a look at Greiger's like because Yusei eventually beat like this turbo dude, this like loudmouth biker guy named Hunter Pace, who's now I'm thinking about it, kind of have similar aspects to like Johnny Blaze in a way, from Marvel, the Ghost Rider, because he got like a skull kind of theme to his deck and bike. But unlike Johnny Blaze, he's kind of like a loudmouth. But he lost to Yusei, and then Yusei rose up through the tournament and took on Greiger. And Leo was trying to like spy on, because Greiger typically give his make sure his bike is like in like a secret area so nobody can like see it and try to mess with it, and even put in like alarms so he'll be notified if somebody's breaking in. And they end up finding he ends up finding Leo and bring him to Yusei, which gives him and Yusei like a heart to heart, because you find out Greiger comes from this village that I guess you later find out that Rex was testing like the inner D situation, which resulted in like a explosion that got Greiger's village caught up in. So his family was missing, but they all died, let's be honest. So you later find that Greiger, having like a grudge against Goodwin later on. But here at the start, when you first meet him, you think like, oh, Rex knows what happened to his family, so if I participate and win the tournament, he'll tell me everything I need to know and help me find him. With his resources, he can make that possible. Blah blah blah. But yeah, Yusei end up beating Greiger, and like in an awesome display like here, Greiger really wants revenge against, once he find out like the truth, he really wants revenge against a good one. So he pressed a button and released this spike from one of his wheels, and it kind of propelled itself in like almost perfect aim, shot it right, because like in like not in the middle of the tournament, but it's like there's like a kind of like the the Seattle's little needle thing. It has like a little ring. It's something similar uh, on the side of the stadium where Rex, Jack, and Lazar are held up watching the tournament. This thing comes crashing through, and because of Rex's strong ass prosthetic arm, because just because you got a prosthetic arm doesn't mean you got like super strength either, but it's high tech future, whatever. He caught that sucker while it was still spinning, and thanks to his metal arm, he put it to a grinding halt. And I was like, shocking Lazar and Jack. I was like, what the hell? And then, Gregor ends up getting arrested, and Eve Warren and you say, don't trust Goodwin, blah, blah, blah. So now it's like, Rex is like obviously the bad guy, there's no way around it at that point. But that's on my shirt. Eventually Yusei goes up against Akiza and trying to duel her. He's trying to reach her, like the real Akiza, and it's like, don't hide behind that mask, you're a good person, that kind of thing. And it's a awesome duel, despite Yusei's taking like a brunt of like real damage, but he's not gonna hate her or belittle her or call her a monster or anything like that, despite that's all she ever heard growing up, because like she didn't like the Crimson Dragon mark and her psychic abilities are curses, but usually he's trying to tell her, no, that's what makes you special. But Yusei won. Sarah comes in and shoots her away, so that way he does, nobody's trying to influence or mess up his influence on Akiza. So ultimately Yusei goes to the end of the tournament so he can duel against Jack. But you see like of course Luna's not a real duelist, so at first they had, earlier in the tournament, they had Leo pretending to be Luna dueling in her place against Gregor, which eventually he lose, of course. But once they figure out who's the real signer is Luna, they figure out it was Luna, so they put her in there as okay, no more tricks, get in here, because they do like a loser bracket kind of situation. So I have Luna coming up against this what is it, some kind of priest looking dude or whatever, but obviously him and this ape guy has some sick obsession with this spirit world thing, and it's like, I do not care for this, honestly. It kind of ticks me out when it's like, typically if you're doing flashbacks or trying to mess with somebody, it's like, okay, go through a flashback, come back present day, continue to duel, then continue to talk, and you can talk about these kind of things. But it's like you trying to mesh, okay, we're getting inside Luna's head, and you're trying to use her to enter the spirit world while continuing to duel. Here's my monster, he's creeping out of the shadows, and it's it gets jumbled, and it's it kind of takes me out, and it's I do not care for this part. None of Leo and Luna's duels are really kind of spark any interest in me. I do not care for it. I usually skip it. That's just me. If you're watching sort of these the 5Ds for the first time, obviously you gotta check out every episode at least once, and then you can decide for yourself which ones you probably return to more so than the others. I watched Yu-Gi-Oh franchise so much that I know which ones that I probably will watch more often than the others. Akiza go through the same kind of stick with this criminal profiler thing, which she eventually beats. Uh, uh, but it's like he's really like kind of messed with her to the point where she's like, you know, causing like damage to the stadium half the time. And her technically Akiza's first match out of the tournament against this wannabe knight, like he just come out of a Ren fair, and his voice, but the same guy who voices Seto Kaiba, and it was like so funny to hear this Seto Kaiba-esque voice in some kind of like medieval knight kind of medieval England tone, and he's like really leaning hard into it. It was so kind of odd and funny. But like I said, in the end, it goes down to Yusei and Jack, and thanks to their duo, which is epic as hell, they get transported to like the past, but all 5 signers are are seeing this, whereas like they see because every 5,000 years a new group of signers is chosen. They transport 5,000 years prior. Looks like a Mayan kind of because 5Ds is all about Egypt. This is like Mayan, heavy Maya influence, Maya and Inca influence. So they see like the original 5 signers, worshiping the Crimson Dragon, and like if the Crimson Dragon isn't there to protect them, the dark signers will just cause destruction in the world. So and the cycle keeps repeating. But in this season, you will see, Yusei and his friends finally put a stop to it, so that way they don't have to keep doing this cycle all over again. Yusei beats Jack. He's champion now, which people are having a hard time believing. Fake news, blah blah blah. Well, I won't say it's fake. They'll probably think it's fake news, but people who weren't there question it. Or then again, thanks to the Crimson Dragon kind of blocking most of the duel, at least the tail end of it. Some of them are having a hard time believing like Yusei really like pulled out the win, but it's there on the big screen. Yusei beat Jack. Then you get introduced to Carly Carmine, and kind of like a nerdy reporter, like a pretty much like a wannabe Lois Lane, that she trying to get to like make a name for herself, trying to get down to what was that strange light, what's good when hiding, and like trying to get quotes from Yusei, and then trying to find Jack, and then she ends up getting feelings for Jack. Which, speaking of, she Jack's handler Mina also has feelings for Jack, but it's just obviously not reciprocated. But Jack and Carly has more of a connection, which eventually Jack grew to have feelings for Carly, who he initially tried to brush off. But all of spending time together is kind of like, thanks to Carly, he comes to realize that what he did to his friends in the satellite was crummy, and like, even Yusei, who thinking like he, Jack, turned his back on his friends, learned to forgive Jack, and even understand that, hey, like, Jack was put in a position that, like, was given like an offer that he obviously couldn't refuse, and he doesn't totally begrudge Jack, because anybody else in that position would probably made the same doggone choice. But it's just that he just wish he came to talk with him at least, or something, or at least not try to put his own friends in danger just to take a card and like go running off. Um, so usually come across these, like at least the first grunt of the dark signers, which usually eventually B becomes to understand like these dark signers obviously wants to take down the five signers in order to nullify the Crimson Dragon, so the dark signers can summon the great beast, which is just like a big giant sludge monster, to take over and destroy the world, because they just like in their life, they didn't have nothing, or at least some stuff was taken from them. Something or someone was taken from them in some aspects, so they kind of like abandoned life. They're pretty much like anti-life. And like I mentioned about the like Misty and the monkey duelist and Roman, but you also got Callan Kessler, who is a former friend of Jack, Yusei, and Crow, which eventually you meet Crow, who's been like looking after like a lot of the satellite kids and have like a dream of finishing the bridge between satellite and New Domino, like his idol, the I forgot what he called him, but just mystery duelist or whatever, who was trying to like finish the bridge. Who you eventually learned that it was Rex, who was in his younger days was like the hero duelist whose dreams was connecting the bridge between satellite and New Domino. But obviously he kind of like you feel like he failed at that and didn't try again, and so he stuck to his like scientific outlet with Yusei's father and his brother. Anyway, Callan, Yusei, Jack, and Crow was part of the Enforcers. It's kind of like dueling gang in Satellite, who had like a certain section that they watched, but these other gangs in the entire region, they have their own little section carved out. Where I don't understand why they're like the only good gang or whatever, but of course, like all the other gangs were kind of like wicked in some aspects, and they were like oppressing their territory. So the goal of the Enforcers, with Callan as the leader, is like, okay, we're gonna take down each of these gangs, and to make Satellite safe. And so they had this like these armbands where they, with perfect accuracy for some reason, twirl around and kind of like a bolo, and like attach it to another duelist dual disc, and whoever loses gets their got like electrical charge that blows up the not blow up, but kind of like send like a surge that destroys the dual disc, and like a kind of like a mini kind of explosion. And I guess also kind of mess up the cars in the process. I guess because how could it not? Because the deck is literally right there when it, the piece erupts. So eventually they complete their goal once they did it, but now because Sector Security now has dual runners and their goal is like heavy patrol in the area to stop like roving band of duelist gangs or whatever. So Callan now has like a goal in mind. Okay, we're gonna take on the Sector Security, and the others is like, okay, that's a little bit too much because we don't have the manpower, and like we're not we'll turn to the same people that we hated. And you can see that brought to the forefront that Callan was, because one of the gangs is like, got like, kids half their age a part of it. And, Crow is like, okay, I'm not going after our kid. But of course, Callan doesn't hesitate. And Crow and Jack decided, okay, we're out because this is not what the enforcer is supposed to be. Yusei decided to stay behind because Callan saved his life, at one point, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna stick around and maybe I can like talk some sense into him at the very least. But there was no talking sense to him anymore, and Yusei decides like, hey, maybe if I walk away and he realizes he can't do it on his own, maybe he'll just come to his senses, on his own. But didn't work. He decided to sabotage, pretty much commit, domestic terrorism at this point, because he sabotaged a bunch of dual discs that the sector security collected and caused like a explosion. So now sector security is like, okay, full on, find these guys, find the leader. The rest of y'all can go, but I want the leader because we're sending him to prison. Which, initially the others trying to find Callan so they can like try to at least get him out of here. But once they realize that like he's like just gone nuts with power, they they still friends, but each one of them thought like, because you initially thought like Yusei was just gonna be the one to, because Yusei had a plan like, okay, I'm just gonna say I'm the leader, so they'll just arrest me and they'll leave the rest of y'all alone. But Crow and Jack had that same thought, but they come, the police wasn't stupid. They knew Callan for some reason was the leader, and it's like, why would you just initially didn't believe them and zeroed in on the right leader? But Callan assumed that Yusei, betrayed him, so he was arrested, eventually died in prison, I think from starvation, but then became a dark signer once like Roman got his hooks into him. And he did the same thing with like Carly and Greiger. We'll get to that in a second. But Yusei gets bumps into Callan, and Callan challenged Yusei to a match. This will be the first match. They duel twice. Technically, in the first match, Yusei lost, but typically when you lose against a dark signer in a duel, technically like sometimes the loser gets sent away, kind of like their soul gets taken away, or if you're not a dark signer already, you might turn into a dark signer, I guess, if you have like a grudge that you seek revenge or something like that, that's so strong that you come back as a dark signer, that kind of thing. And Yusei is trying to convince Callan like, I didn't betray you, but Callan ain't trying to hear it because like, you didn't even about to visit me in prison. And like, Crow's like, we tried, but they keep turning us away. You gotta believe us. We wouldn't abandon you like that. And of course, Callan didn't really want to hear it, whether it's true or not. Like he was left alone. He died, and he blames them for his death. And of course, like he has an earthbound immortal, which is kind of like a man-sized golem thing. And technically, he would have beat. Yusei would have lost and got his soul sent away, if not for his dual runner. Mount. One of the wheels kind of, came off and caused Yusei to crash, which nullified the duel entirely. So a loser wasn't officially declared, which kind of seems like a plot convenience just to keep the main character around. But technically, Yusei lost. It's like, second official loss, but the first loss on screen. In the sub, you see like Yusei, because Yusei was obviously in pain when it seems like maybe it's like bruising in the dub, or at least like internal bruising in the dub. It's like, oh, my stomach. It just seems like he's wiped out. But in the sub, is actually freaking shrapnel from the piece of his motorcycle lodged in his side of his gut. So he had to take it to the orphanage where like the head person, Maria, is it Maria or Mariah, something like that, attends to him and knows that the local doctor attends to Yusei's wound. And Jack and Crow are completely shocked as their friend has returned, former friend has returned, and now they're like, kind of like have like guilt, in a way, still have guilt because like they were that close, and the fact that they suffering from obviously trauma, the fact that they're part of a gang and like growing up in a rough neighborhood, doing what they have to do to survive, and became close as friends and a team, and trying to make do their part in making like despite their living conditions, trying to make it as safe as they could, and making sure like people can roam the streets without getting like jumped on or pickpocketed or whatever. But things just didn't turn out so well. So and they lost a good friend in the process, which they feel guilty over, and they never knew whatever happened to him. For all they knew, he was right away in prison. Then, like I said, like Carly eventually becomes a dark signer herself because she was running an investigation against the Arcadia movement, running into Sayer, who duels her, and she has this like Fortune Lady deck, which in recent years has more support to it, thankfully, because that was an interesting kind of cards where they get powered up depending on the number of turns that goes by, kind of thing. And it's kind of like a removing from play type of deck too. But Carly wasn't much. She's like using cards as like a fortune for her, but she wasn't much of like a duelist like that. But because of Sayer dueling her and his second powers, ends up causing her to be pushed out of the building, falling to her death. Even though it's usually when people fall to their obvious death, it's usually some big purple luminescent light that they fall through. Gregor ended up getting caused that same kind of thing when Roman kind of pushed him into this kind of like pit thing to be reborn as like a dark signer, because Gregor had a grudge against Rex that needed to be fulfilled to seek revenge for what happened to his family and his village. Carly sought revenge against Sayer because like he murdered her. So she came back, thought she got her revenge against Sayer because like you think Sayer died after like Carly came back to duel him, and like I guess her dark side was like a little better duelist than her like standard normal side. But then like she sought revenge against Jack, and who knew she was like such an expert turbo duelist. She sought revenge against Jack because she feels like Jack just manipulated her or didn't think of her no more than just some weaselly reporter that was following around him like a little puppy dog kind of situation. And she obviously has still feelings for Jack, but it's like feeling like, okay, I'm going to turn into a dark signer and we can rule this pathetic world together as king and queen kind of thing. And Jack is just like, no, he holding on to, Carly's, broken glasses. Like, no, I want my Carly back. And it's weird saying Carly because that's what my ex like to call me, like Carly. It's like a little pet name, which in turn kind of like gave me an idea of like if I ever have a daughter, that's like I would probably name her. But Jack beats Carly, got through to her, but she got sent away because she lost the duel. But every time you beat one of these earthbound immortals, they absorb all the souls of nearby people, because It's pretty much like a rapture kind of situation when these earthbound immortals get summoned. Any nearby people that's not with a signer to protect them in that little red shield thing, they get absorbed into like their earthbound immortals. Even some of the early friends, Yusei's friend, like Raleigh and those other three, get absorbed by like Roman's earthbound immortal, and like you see that happening quite a few times. But they eventually return once they destroy those earthbound immortals. Even most of the dark signers come back, except for the duelist with the ape gorilla deck. For some reason, he doesn't return. And Roman as well. But eventually, thanks to Jack giving like kind of like a brutal kind of pep talk with Yusei, trying to get him out of his funk. He punched him in the gut. Like, dude, he just had surgery in his abdomen, and you punch him in the gut, and he's still recovering. But it's anime. And, you see the kind of thing happening a lot. You want to get to your friend, punch him for some reason. But Yusei had to get out of his own head and stop blaming himself for what happened to Callan, because Callan made his own choices, and he has to live with them, not you. So eventually, Yusei got a rematch, beat Callan. Callan regained his senses and apologized for his transgressions. Eventually, Callan came back. You'll see him in the second season, eventually when I get to it. So, and like I said, like Kiza beat Misty and realized that Sarah was like a complete, asshole. Thanks to Misty and her Earthbound Immortal, which is a kind of gruesome, because it's one of those moments where it's like, okay, typically you don't like when the English dub kind of steer away from like stuff that is clearly, obviously, there's going to be death. But I guess this one I might let slide, because, you got her Misty's lizard Earthbound Immortal taking his tongue and wrap it around Sayer after finding out that he was the cause of her brother's death, and obviously have her Earthbound Immortal eat this, sadistic fuck. But they turn away before the actual eating process happened. It's kind of like, a very like Godzilla-esque moment, because these Earthbound Immortals are like freaking kaijus, which is, like intense. And I like the design, because it's very like, it's a lot of 3D graphics being utilized in this in the 5d's franchise, and some of which works, sometimes it don't, depending on how you feel about it. But I like the way the Earthbound Immortals look, and their 3D models look. I really enjoy their movement, and when they being summoned, it's like, I really like it. It's not your standard thing like you see with even though it's cool looking, still it's not it's still like a step above what you see from like the summoning of the Egyptian gods. The sacred beasts, their summoning isn't all that cracked up to be. They like just like low rent Egyptian god cards. I don't really care for the sacred beasts like that. But the Earthbound Immortals are freaking dope as hell. So that's the end of Sarah. But I'm glad, like, Misty and Akiza come to realize, who Sarah truly is into his core. Then like you find out that Rex duel against his brother Roman lost on purpose so he can be reborn as a dark signer, because he has this, because he wasn't gathering the 5 signers just to beat Roman and his dark signers. He intends to utilize, because since Roman was the one of the initial signers. However, he, because like there's like a deeper, because Lazar answers to somebody from Iliaster, who is like the true boss of Lazar, that was is manipulating things behind the scenes, which you'll see in the second season. But uh, uh, Roman, which is funny because initially when he's talking with Yusei, he said like, oh, your father was the reason that the inner D, he caused the inner D to explode because of his hubris and blah blah blah. Then come to like, realize that that was all a lie. Like, why would you say it was my father who did it? Because I wanted to mess with you. And I was like, that's the most honest villain that I've seen in all of anime. It's like, just like, cause I just want to fuck with you. I like, damn, that was like, like the most trolling thing I've seen in anime. Like, wow, like, because I just wanted to mess with you. But Rex wanted to control, because since Roman was being taken over by the darkness of the dark signers, he and his signer good half was on his other arm, could not hold it back for long. He decided to cut off his own arm, which is kind of blatantly obvious. He cut off his own arm and put it into some kind of capsule, threw it to his brother Rex, and tells him, while he still has like good conscience still left, find the other signers, beat me and stop all this. And he caused the explosion to kill himself. So like, and just to like, I guess keep his dark half from like using that to I guess facilitate any kind of wicked needs to bring out the earthbound immortals and like the goop monster thing. At least stall for time while Rex gathers the other signers, kind of like put like the kibosh temporarily on like the dark signers' plans, or Iliaster's plans. Who the leader of Iliaster is kind of like manipulating Roman 20 years prior, and for some reason to unlock, the use of the inner D, you gotta use cards in order to be the keys, because you got all the five signers. Well, not all the five signers, but you got like Ancient Fairy Dragon, Red Archfiend, and Stardust, and Black Rose as like the keys to unlock the inner D's use, whatever. But Ancient Fairy Dragon was left behind while Yusei's father was scrambling to get the other three, and somehow it ended up, and those three ended up in the hands of Akiza, Jack, and Yusei. But anywho, yeah, Rex, wanted like the power of both light and the darkness, so he can manipulate them both to rule the world. Which eventually he attached, his brother's arm with the head of the Crimson Dragon onto his, take off the prosthetic and attach it to his body, which, just because you're blood related shouldn't, like, I don't know. Sometimes, when it comes to like, attaching something that belongs to somebody, even though it's a relative, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be our match. As you can, if you, learn about like heart transplants, just because, or like any transplant of the organ, and like sometimes even relatives typically usually are not matches. It's very, I'm not a doctor, but it's like, the percentage is high for that to work, but it's not always 100%. And sometimes, like, why like that, the severed arm still like, get attached and it's functioning, and like, you're attaching bone to a bone, and it's like you're moving around, like what is that? How is that even possible or feasible? to make that arm function again onto your body, despite being like a stasis kind of thing. But then, like, since he's reborn as a Dark Center and he has like a Crimson Dragon mark, now he's dueling the ultimate duel against Jack, Crow, and Yusei. And it's an awesome duel, and you got like 3-on-1. And Crow goes down first, despite being disheartened that the once idol that he looked up to, who had a goal to bring Satellite and New Domino back together, at least the lower class and the higher class together, despite him failing, the fact that he tried, it still gave Crow inspiration to try to pick up where he left off. And Crow goes down first, but even though he only got 1 life point left, same thing with Jack. Eventually, he got 1 life point left, but each one of those got 1 face down card that Yusei utilized as he's the last one standing, utilized to power up his Stardust Dragon, and then Synchro Summon to bring out Majestic Stardust Dragon to ultimately defeat Rex. Especially after Rex eventually lost the power of the Crimson Dragon that he pretty much tried to reap from the other 4 signers. But not only they get it, gain their signer marks back, but Rex is no longer have the power that had the Crimson Dragon. That went towards Yusei because he initially had the tail of the Crimson Dragon, but that went towards Crow because Crow now had, because of his, I guess, honor and what he's fighting for. He got more to fight for, and all that stuff. So he had earned the right to become a signer, which he doesn't in this season show that he has a dragon, but in the next season he has Black Winged Dragon, which is a cool card on its own. I wish we saw it in this season though, at least once. But anyway, Crow did have a match against Dragon once he got revived against as a Dark Signer, because Crow and Greiger had like a Crow was trying to find I'm going to stop these Dark Signers, and he accused Lazar of being like a Dark Signer, and you see a duel between these two. But Crow was kind of like a pig-headed and not listening, thinking you're not a Dark Signer, sure. And it's like, if he was a Dark Signer, wouldn't you see purple light or whatever? You've seen this happen before. Why would you just assume? Or of course, yeah, you profiling yourself just because he looks funny. Yeah, he looks like Pennywise, so of course he looks like a fucking bad guy. And yeah, technically he kind of is. He eventually gets kind of a change of heart or whatever in the second season. But just because he looks like a creepy clown doesn't make him like a bad guy initially. But he duels against Greiger, who him and Carly gets these kind of rudimentary Earthbound Immortals. That's not true Earthbound Immortals, because Greiger gets a whale and Carly gets some kind of bird. But eventually Greiger and Crow come to an understanding that they're both fighting for their loved ones and people they were charged to protect. But Crow ended up beating Greiger. I think Greiger did return eventually, after this whole ordeal with Rex was over. All 3 end up defeating Rex, but Rex, now that he's relieved of the Dark Signer influence, sees his brother, I guess, in the afterlife or in between or something like that, and goes off into the ether to we're going to catch up like I want to catch up with my brother. We have a lot to catch up on, and they go off into like the netherworld, I guess, whatever. So Lazar in season 2 will eventually become like the acting mayor of New Domino, and eventually like you see like the construction of the bridge between Satellite and New Domino, as like eventually like because Goodwin did promise you say that he was going to do that, but the construction is underway. I don't want to forget to mention how like because there were like some changes made, like at least changes of hearts between like New Domino and New Domino citizens that stopped looking down on people who was from the satellite, because like they helped, not only just because they helped save, there was satellite people who helped save the world and the city as a whole, but also with people like Officer Trudge, who have, after the first loss against Callan and they taken Yusei to get treated, Trudge sees like the head of the orphanage and the kids that she's looking after, and he actually get to, instead of being there as the officer of the law, he's there to sorry, it's like insects or whatever. Trudge actually get to see like the other side of things, and it's like thanks to this lady of the orphanage showing him that these people aren't like bad. At least not all of them. There's good people here that despite their circumstances, they want to contribute to their neighborhood, and they want to grow up and have dreams of going topside and living a life, and despite certain members of sector security and making it harder, or at least some of the citizens up top are trying to make it harder for us, we still try to eke out a life here. And Officer Trust, gets like an epiphany, and he learns to he learns that it's like it's more than meets the eye than what he probably initially were led to believe, and overcome his prejudices against like people of the lower class, because they're not just lower class, they're still people, and they deserve like love and respect and a chance to make a way for themselves. So, and then he sees this little kid who the lady tells Trudge that this little boy who's following Trudge around so often, like his there was like a fire at his house. I think his parents, he lost his parents in a fire, and it was Sector Security that came to his rescue. And so because of that kindness from those few Sector Security members, he wants to grow up to be Sector Security, so he can like return that favor to others. And you always see the boy like helping around, cause around the place and helping others, because he wants to help. He wants to be there for people, and that's what's his goal. He wants to be Sector Security. So I thought that was like a nice little moment for Trudge to learn. But yeah, that was Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D Season 1 as, in a nutshell. It's like I mentioned, like I wish they kind of like, they eventually kind of focus on like the true kind of like supporting characters. But it's like people like Izanagi and what's the other guy that was with Izanagi in the prison, starts with a T. I forgot his name. Blue spiky hair guy. These two and like Rowley and those other three guys, why I honestly like why they're there. You just wish there's like they have more, they can add more to the story than just being like just there. And I wish that like was more to it than that. This is more so like a con against season 2, but like Akiza will eventually become nerfed, which is kind of like sad. And eventually, you don't see much from her second powers, at least none that I can recall in the later seasons, because there's only 3 seasons of 5d's, but the third one, half of, at least partially the end of the second season leading into the third season, is like in the sub version, which I will go through. At least I think the entire season 2 is in English dub. I think so. We'll see. But yeah. Yeah, I wish they kind of focus more, which they do, but I wish they kind of just cut out like the needless characters. It's kind of like you establish them, but you don't do nothing with them except like see how like good friends they are, and they do some rudimentary filler crap and whatever. Like, we'll get this bike to Yusei so they won't get taken because we're friends, and then they get sucked up, into one of the Earthbound Immortals, so they're just gone, and just like know nothings at the end of the day. You'll think Rally will be something, but she pops up maybe like every once in a blue moon, even though she's a freaking girl, and they play her like a boy. I wish that they just commit to her being like a girl. Rex Goodwin's like motivations and certain choices seems kind of convoluted. They can just done one thing and cut the middleman kind of situation, but it's kind of convoluted. Like, if you want to prove Yusei is a signer, you don't need to go through this rigmarole with having this warden who you eventually fire, but you hire initially to be like, because I'm pretty sure you knew he was like a complete shithead, but you still hired him anyway. To like who put these prisoners, because they're already incarcerated, and the purpose of like a prison is for rehabilitation. That's what you think, but prisons are pretty much like just a business like any other, and there's more money involved with keeping people locked up than rehabilitation. But this guy is just so freaking sadistic that you just fired him because I guess he's lost and didn't really push Yusei to his limit like that, to at least not to your needs. But he could have just hired any old duelist to like put him through his paces or whatever. Just put him into the tournament. Anyway, yeah, but aside from those things, I love 5d's. This is like a, as I mentioned before, 5d's, GX, and Duel Monsters is like my favorite generations of Yu-Gi-Oh! It kind of dipped a little bit for me when getting to Zexal into Arc 5. I think Arc 5 personally I don't care for in general. There's certain aspects that are fun, but as a whole, like, I don't care for it. We'll get to why once we eventually get to it. And Vrain's gonna be fresh for me, so it's only 1 season so far, so we'll see. But anyway, leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D Season 1, any of your pros and cons, and leave a like and subscribe. We just hit 300. I don't think I'm going to be doing anything that special. If we hit like eventually when we hit maybe 500, then 1,000 subscribers, those will probably be like milestones that like it's worth doing something special for. So let's keep up the support, and like once we hit 500, I'll come up with something to do, something special for you guys to celebrate. And yeah, I will see you guys. Well, I'm already starting JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind, so that'll be the next spoiler review that I'll cover. After that, I will go right into Iron Man Armored Adventures Season 1. Well, matter of fact, I'm going to go through all the uh, Iron Man Armored Adventure seasons, back to back, because I want to start covering a lot of Iron Man comic to review. Well, not all of them, but at least a couple major ones, and as well as the Iron Man films. So it's gonna be after Golden Wind, we're gonna be focused heavy into Iron Man stuff. So look forward to that. And yeah, I will see you guys later as I get into some more God of War 4 technically, and some more multiverses. So I already got the first video of God of War reboot up on the channel, so check that out.